The Sports Time Podcast.
All right, as you guys are big hockey fans. What happened this past week was crazy. Tom Willson gets fined and doesn't get suspended. That was kind of a huge topic. Do you guys think do you think the NHL made the right decision, or do you think he should have been fined or suspended more than just fined?
So if nobody knows about Tom Willson, trying to think about an NBA player, an NFL player that consistently gets himself in the hot water.
Like a Vontaze perfect.
Yeah, good call, Myles. I like that. Good job. Anyways, Tom Willson is, I will say Tom Wilson's a great player. He's really good. He's a really good player, and that's why it pains me to watch him play as dirty as he does. Tom Willson has already been slapped with a 20-game suspension, and then it got dropped down to 14, and that was about a couple of years ago. Since then, he had this whole "I'm gonna play better. I'm gonna be a different man." Just recently, within the last year, slapped with another 7-game suspension for a hit to the head. This guy does not know how to control himself whatsoever. But what ended up happening on Monday night in the Rangers Capitals game was Tom Willson was trying to clean up a scrum, which was around his net, and Pavel Buchnevich, who plays on the Rangers, was on the ice face down. And what Tom Willson was doing is he had his stick in front of Buchnevich's neck and then was punching him in the back of the head, which a lot of people would say, or well, a lot of hockey men would say, "Oh, well, that's just a part of the game. It's not a big deal." And then that was followed by Rangers superstar Artemi Panarin trying to jump in to help out his teammate, getting on his back and at least just trying to pull him off. In which, at that point, Panarin's helmet was off, and Willson grabbed Panarin by the hair and pulled him down onto the ice, in which luckily Panarin never hit his head off the ice. And so at that point, he's already a repeat offender. He's Tom Willson. That's all you need to know is he's Tom Willson. And people were thinking, is he going to get suspended for the rest of the season? He's going to be suspended for 2021 in total, or what's going to happen? And $5,000 fine. So equivalent to about $66 worth of a normal person's salary. But yeah, he absolutely deserved to be suspended. And then the worst part about that is that the following game, the Rangers and Capitals played again, in which Pavel Buchnevich actually ended up cross-checking Anthony Mantha, Wilson's teammate, in the face, and ended up getting hit with a 1-game suspension. So the whole Department of Player Safety in the NHL is a little broken, in which after the Willson fine, the Rangers came out and made a statement that George Peros, the head of Department of Player Safety, should actually resign from his role because he's unfit for the role. I can't say I disagree with them. I think that would be the right call, but unfortunately, when it comes to the NHL and their Department of Player Safety, it comes from the top down. So until something happens about Colin Campbell or the commissioner Gary Bettman, which you've probably heard about before, unfortunately, nothing is going to be done. But the fallout from this Rangers statement, the owner, James Dolan, who you probably know, ended up firing his general manager and president of hockey operations, Jeff Gorton and John Davidson. After apparently they decided that they were going to distance themselves from the statement and try to make themselves look like they had no part to do with this, which James Dolan's a problematic character, and James Dolan does his fair share of unsavory stuff. But at the end of the day, he said the right thing. And unfortunately, if your general manager and president of hockey operations are not willing to stand by that, well, that says something about your franchise. And I think it was probably the right move, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the Department of Player Safety completely dropped the ball.
So yeah, it's just such a weird, it seems like Tom Willson is kind of like, as a Kawhi Leonard fan, I would probably consider him as a Zaza Pachulia type of player.
Yeah, you could say that.
Not like Zaza's not that good though. So like, if you said Tom Wilson's a decent player, stuff like that. But I think, I kind of saw a little bit of the highlight, but it was just kind of crazy how it kind of set the sports world on fire. Like, as me, I'm not a huge hockey fan. That kind of all of a sudden was popping up everywhere, and everybody was talking about like Dan Patrick, Pat McAfee. I guess he's more of a hockey guy as well, but they were all mentioning it. And it was very interesting to see how the sports world reacted to it.
So if you're not a big hockey fan, you probably equate line brawls and everybody running around like a chicken with their head cut off, scrapping as what hockey is. And that's exactly what you got in the game the next night against the Capitals and Rangers. 1 second into the game, and there was 88 minutes of penalties handed out. In a typical game, you might have 12. So that was absolutely crazy to see. And that's what happens when the NHL doesn't step in and discipline guys the way that it should be. It gets taken into the hands of the players, and they dole out punishments as they see fit. And fists were flying.
Do you think there's any way that the players union for the NHL can fix that, or is that just a completely broken thing that they're just not even going to look for?
So it's a two-way street when it comes to this, because so for example, with the Tom Willson fine and then also his previous suspensions, the $5,000 fine is the maximum allowed under the CBA, so under their collective bargaining agreement. And that was negotiated by the NHL Players Association as well as the NHL. And in addition to that, when a suspension is handed out by the NHL, the NHL Players Association can actually go to a third-party arbitration in order to appeal the suspension to bring it down. So that's actually what ended up happening with Tom Willson, was that he got hit with a 20-gamer and then it got brought down to 14. So while I do like to put a lot of the blame on the league, it is a two-way street, because if the NHLPA was not allowing this maximum suspension stuff and then also allowing for third-party arbitration in order to reduce these suspensions, end of the day, you still have guys like Tom Willson that are doing dangerous shit, and like they need to be held accountable for their actions. And I think that the NHL needs to just pony up and say, all right, if you guys are going to appeal it, if you guys are going to try and appeal down to 25 games, well, how about this? I'll hit you with a 40-game suspension, try appealing it down to 20 games, and we'll hit you and we'll get you at 30 or whatever. Right. So, like I said, it's a two-way street between the two. And it is frustrating to see, because you want to see these guys held accountable, but unfortunately they have two powers that are not willing to do anything.
And it's so frustrating as a hockey fan too, because the game has, as Nolan said, gotten away from a lot of that dirty crap and really gotten refined in its player skill. Like if you look at the average NHL player now versus 20 years ago, they are way faster, way harder and accurate of shooters, way better playmakers. Like the aggregate skill level of the NHL has gotten so much higher. The on-ice product is fantastic, yet we're making the news as a league for brutish bullshit, when we should be getting highlighted for crazy McDavid goals where he's weaving through all five players and going bar down. Like, it's just frustrating as a hockey fan to see, but at least people are watching and we'll get to see the crazy stuff.
One last thing I wanted to add to that about the game changing. Just to kind of put this into perspective, Cole Caulfield is the Montreal Canadiens' like top prospect. He's like their big goal scoring savant that they're all really excited about. Cole Caulfield is like 5'7" and like 160 pounds. He's absolutely tiny, but he has one of the nastiest shots to come into this league in a very long time. And that's what makes guys like Tom Willson, unfortunately, so valuable, is because the prototypical NHL player 20 years ago is the complete opposite of what the prototypical NHL player is now. The demand for a guy like Tom Willson is so much higher now, because teams want those big guys that can skate, because you're not just going to sign a bunch of goons in order to fight. You want these guys to be able to play the game of hockey and to be able to contribute in some way. That's why guys like Ryan Reeves are not getting these big contracts, but he still has a little bit of skill that he can contribute offensively. But like I said, the whole like the tide is shifted over what players, like over what the prototypical NHL player is nowadays. It's crazy to think, actually.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the left. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click on the right.